Have you ever caught yourself swallowing words, feelings, and opinions just to avoid an argument? Have you felt that tight knot in your throat when you realize that saying what you truly think might cost you his presence in your life? When silence becomes a strategy to keep a relationship, something very serious is happening, and it rarely starts in an obvious way. At first, it feels like care. You believe you are being understanding, mature, patient. You tell yourself that avoiding conflict is a form of love. So you stay quiet when something hurts. You stay quiet when something bothers you. You stay quiet when something crosses your boundaries. Not because you agree, but because you are afraid. Afraid of losing him. Afraid of being abandoned. Afraid of being seen as too difficult. Slowly, silence stops being a choice and becomes emotional survival. You begin to measure every word, every reaction, every expression. You learn to read his mood before speaking. You learn to adapt. You learn to shrink. And all of this happens while you convince yourself that you are doing it for the sake of the relationship. But there is an invisible cost in this process. Every time you silence yourself to avoid losing someone, you lose a piece of yourself. Your voice becomes softer. Your needs become less important. Your feelings start to feel like exaggeration, drama, or weakness, even to yourself. The truth is, love should never demand constant silence. Love should never require you to hide who you are in order to be accepted. When a relationship only survives because you erase yourself, it is not built on connection, but on fear. And fear has never been love. This is one of the most silent traps in many relationships. There are no screams, no visible aggression, no scandals. There is only a woman who learned to stay quiet, so she would not be left behind. And when this happens, the warning sign is already there, even if you cannot fully see it yet. If this story is such a thing by you, take a breath. This video is an invitation to awareness, not judgment. Understanding why you stay silent is the first step toward reclaiming your voice and your identity. At the end of this video, subscribe to the Beyond Love channel and leave a comment sharing what impacted you most in this first part. Your experience may help other women recognize themselves too. There comes a point where the fear of losing someone starts to cost far too much. Not suddenly, but slowly, almost imperceptibly. You do not wake up one day without knowing who you are. It happens little by little, as you keep shaping yourself, adjusting, and fitting in to avoid rejection. The fear of losing him begins to guide your decisions. You think twice before expressing a feeling. 3 times before disagreeing. 4 times before saying, "This hurts me," because deep down, this I so much, he will leave. And this belief slowly becomes the emotional foundation of the relationship. At this stage, you are no longer just staying silent. You are constantly negotiating with yourself. You accept things that hurt you. You tolerate behaviors that go against your values. You excuse attitudes you would never have accepted before. All to maintain the sense of safety that his presence represents. But this sense of safety is fragile. It depends on your silence, your emotional obedience, your ability to erase yourself. And the more you erase yourself, the farther you drift from who you truly are. Your desires become unclear. Your wishes lose strength. Your identity begins to revolve around his moods, needs, and expectations. Many women describe this process as constant exhaustion, a heaviness in the chest, a feeling of always being on alert. This happens because living with the fear of losing someone activates a permanent state of emotional tension. You never fully relax. You never feel truly safe to be yourself. And here is a difficult but necessary truth. When you have to shrink for someone to stay, the relationship is already unbalanced. Healthy love does not require you to disappear so the other person remains. It does not condition presence on your silence. In these situations, the most painful loss is not always the end of the relationship. It is the loss of yourself while he is still there. You look in the mirror and feel that something has changed, but you cannot fully explain what it is. You only know that you no longer recognize yourself. Understanding this is essential, because while you believe the greatest risk is losing him, the real danger may be continuing to lose yourself. And no relationship is worth that price. There comes a moment when silence stops being an occasional reaction and becomes an invisible rule within the relationship. You no longer stay quiet only in specific situations. You stay quiet almost all the time. And often, you do not even realize when the shift happened. The boundary was not broken all at once. It was slowly pushed until it disappeared. When silence becomes the rule, your boundaries stop being clear. What was once unacceptable starts to be tolerated. Hurtful comments are brushed off as jokes. Lack of consideration becomes normal. You catch yourself justifying behaviors that hurt you, telling yourself that you are overreacting, that it is not that serious, that you need to be more understanding. This is one of the most dangerous signs, when you begin to invalidate your own pain to protect the relationship. Instead of asking, "Why does this hurt me?" you start asking, "Why am I so sensitive?" The focus shifts from his behavior to your discomfort, as if feeling pain were the real problem. The absence of clear boundaries creates fertile ground for unbalanced relationships. Because where there are no boundaries, there is invasion. And this invasion is not always obvious. It can show up as sarcasm, punishing silence, indifference, control disguised as care, or constant criticism that slowly erodes your self-worth. Over time, you adapt to this environment. You learn to anticipate reactions. You avoid certain topics. You swallow your feelings. And you do this not because you agree, but because speaking feels more dangerous than staying silent. Silence becomes a protection mechanism, even though it is hurting you. The truth is, healthy relationships need space for discomfort, dialogue, and even conflict. Where you cannot speak, there is no true intimacy. There is only coexistence based on fear. And fear does not build love, it builds emotional submission. When you realize your boundaries no longer exist, confusion often follows. You no longer know what is acceptable to ask for. You do not know how far you can go. You do not know what is reasonable to expect. And this confusion benefits only one side of the relationship. Recognizing that silence has become the rule is an important step, because boundaries are not acts of aggression. They are forms of protection. And any relationship that requires you to give them up in order to continue is not offering love, but emotional control. Living in silence within a relationship affects much more than communication. It deeply impacts your emotional health. When you repeatedly stay quiet, emotions that should be expressed do not disappear. They accumulate. And this accumulation begins to show up in quiet, but painful ways. Many women living this way report constant anxiety, trouble sleeping, unexplained irritability, and a persistent sense of emotional heaviness. This happens because the body feels what the mouth does not say. What you do not express turns into tension, exhaustion, and often guilt. Guilt for feeling too much. Guilt for wanting more. Guilt for needing respect. Over time, silence begins to damage your self-esteem. you start doubting your own worth. You begin to believe that you must adapt more, give more, and try harder to deserve love. Your self-confidence slowly erodes until you no longer trust your own perceptions. Another deep impact is emotional disconnection from yourself. You no longer know exactly what you feel because you have learned to swallow emotions before even recognizing them. It becomes difficult to identify what hurts you, what bothers you, and what you need. This disconnection creates an inner emptiness that no relationship can fill. In addition, living in silence often generates resentment. Even if you try to deny it, something inside you begins to rebel. You feel anger for not being heard, sadness for not being emotionally held, and frustration when you realize that your efforts are not enough to change the relationship dynamic. When unacknowledged, this resentment turns into deep, emotional exhaustion. Perhaps the cruelest part of this process is feeling alone while being with someone. His physical presence does not compensate for emotional absence. You feel unable to be authentic, vulnerable, or whole. And this creates a kind of loneliness that hurts more than actually being alone. It is important to understand this. No healthy relationship should make you emotionally sick. Love does not take your breath away, tighten your chest, or require silence for survival. When a relationship brings more anguish than peace, more fear than safety, something needs to be re-examined. Recognizing the emotional impact of silence is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of clarity. Because only when you understand how deeply this is affecting you can you begin to choose differently. And that choice often begins with something simple yet powerful, admitting to yourself that living in silence is hurting you. In many cases, silence we in the current orange. From an early age, many women are taught, directly or indirectly, that loving means giving in, that keeping the peace is their responsibility, and that expressing to many needs may drive people away. Over time, silence becomes normalized as a virtue. You learn that being a good partner means avoiding conflict, that strong women endure more, that complaining is exaggeration, that expressing feelings is seen as drama. Slowly, you internalize the idea that to be loved, you must be easygoing, understanding, and above all, quiet. Past experiences also reinforce this pattern. Previous relationships, where you were abandoned, rejected, or emotionally invalidated, leave deep wounds. In an attempt to avoid reliving that pain, you adapt excessively. Silence becomes a defense mechanism. If I do not disturb, maybe I will not be left. Another powerful factor is the romanticization of sacrifice. Many narratives still sell the idea that true love requires constant self-denial, that suffering is part of love, and that those who love endure. The problem is that when suffering becomes the rule, it stops being love and turns into emotional exhaustion. There is also the fear of loneliness. For many women, being alone feels more frightening than being in a relationship where they cannot fully be themselves. In this context, silence becomes a way to avoid emptiness, even if it costs them their voice. The most delicate part is that all of this happens unconsciously. You do not think, I will stay quiet to be loved. You simply feel that speaking is dangerous, that expressing yourself is risky, that being whole might leave you alone. And without realizing it, you begin to trade authenticity for acceptance. It is essential to question this belief. Love that demands silence is not healthy love. True relationships do not require you to shrink to fit. They create space for you to exist fully, with feelings, boundaries, opinions, and needs. Understanding why you stay silent is not about blaming yourself. It is about freeing yourself. Because when you recognize that this pattern was learned, you also realize it can be unlearned. And reclaiming your voice is a profound act of self-love. There is a decisive moment in many silent relationships. It does not come with a big fight or an explosive argument. It arrives quietly, in a simple, almost ordinary moment, when you realize that something inside you is fading. It is when you honestly ask yourself for the first time, why am I always staying quiet? This moment is often accompanied by deep exhaustion. You feel tired of swallowing words, of adapting, of trying to hold everything together on your own. The effort to sustain the relationship begins to weigh more than the fear of losing it. And for the first time, you consider that continuing this way might be more painful than the possibility of being alone. Many women describe this awakening when they realize they no longer feel genuine joy in the relationship. Laughter becomes rare, lightness disappears. Being together feels like obligation. You are physically present, but emotionally distant. And this hurts because deep down, you know it was not always like this. Another sign of this turning point is the feeling of invisibility. You notice that your needs are rarely considered, that your feelings do not receive real attention, that your pain is minimized or ignored. In that moment, something breaks, the hope that if you stay quiet just a little longer, things will get better. This realization can be frightening, because it brings a difficult question. If I speak now, what will happen? And an even harder one, if I remain silent, what will happen to me? For the first time, you begin to see that silence is not protecting the relationship. It is only postponing deeper damage. This is a delicate but powerful moment, because awareness changes everything. From that point on, you can no longer ignore what you feel. Discomfort becomes a signal, not something to suppress. You begin to understand that your voice has value, even if the other person does not know how to hear it. Silence loses its role as protection and reveals itself for what it truly is, a cost that is far too high. And when this happens, something starts to move inside you. There may still be fear, doubt, and insecurity, but something new is also born, the desire to respect yourself. Recognizing that staying silent is costing too much does not mean you already know what to do. It simply means you stopped lying to yourself. And that is one of the most important steps toward reclaiming your voice, your emotional dignity, and your life. After staying silent for so long, speaking again is not simple. Many women believe that once they recognize the problem, they will naturally be able to express themselves clearly and confidently. But reality is different. Prolonged silence creates fear, insecurity, and even guilt when you try to reclaim your voice. At first, speaking feels wrong. You feel selfish for expressing needs. You feel like you are overreacting for setting boundaries. You fear causing conflict, being misunderstood, or losing everything you have built. This happens because, for a long time, you associated love with self-denial and voice with risk. Another challenge is the other person's reaction. When a silent dynamic is established, any change feels threatening. The person who benefited from your silence may react with resistance, sarcasm, dismissal, or attempts to make you feel guilty for changing. And this can make you question whether speaking is even worth it. In this process, doubt often arises. Am I being unfair now? Am I asking for too much? These questions reveal how deeply you were conditioned to always put yourself last. Speaking, at this stage, is not just communication. It is confronting years of self-erasure. It is important to understand that reclaiming your voice does not mean shouting, accusing, or attacking. It means expressing yourself with clarity, even if your voice shakes. It means saying what you feel without apologizing for your emotional existence. It means accepting that not all discomfort is a sign of wrongdoing. Speaking after so much silence requires courage. Courage to face difficult reactions. Courage to hold your boundaries. Courage to accept that some relationships do not survive when you stop erasing yourself. This is a hard but liberating truth. Because when someone only stays while you are silent, they may never have been there for who you truly are. Reclaiming your voice does not guarantee everything will work out, but it guarantees that you will be whole, and that changes everything. This process does not need to be fast or perfect. Every word spoken is progress. Every boundary set is a reconquest. What matters is not returning to silence out of fear after recognizing the value of your voice. Reaching this point already reveals something important. You have started to listen to yourself. And this may be the most transformative gesture of this entire journey. Because once you truly hear your inner voice, it becomes impossible to continue living in a relationship where silence is the price of staying. Healthy love does not require you to be quiet. It does not ask you to dim your light, hide your emotions, or negotiate your dignity to avoid abandonment. True love creates space. It welcomes dialogue, respects boundaries, and understands that to whole individuals build something far stronger than a relationship held together by fear. Choosing yourself does not mean you stop loving the other person. It means you stop abandoning yourself. It means understanding that you matter too, that your emotions have value, and that your voice deserves to exist in any relationship. There is no true love where only one side is constantly adjusting. Perhaps, when you speak up, you will discover that the relationship can transform. Or perhaps you will discover that it cannot survive without your silence. As frightening as this possibility may be, it also reveals an essential truth. Anything that only exists when you erase yourself was never healthy love. It is important to remember that you do not need to decide everything right now. The first step is not breaking away, confronting, or changing everything at once. The first step is not staying silent with yourself. It is recognizing what you feel, what hurts, and what can no longer be ignored. When you choose to listen to yourself, you begin to reclaim your emotional autonomy. You begin to rebuild your identity. You begin to relate from truth instead of fear. And this changes not only your relationships, but the way you see and value yourself. If this video made you reflect, carry this awareness with you. Pay attention to your silences. Ask yourself where they come from and what they are costing you. Because love should never silence you. Love should strengthen you. Choosing yourself is also love. And often, it is the most necessary love of all.